The encounter at Pasadena, March 1966. March 1966, Municipal Gymnasium of Pasadena, California. At 3 p.m., as the regional karate tournament reached its final exhibition, a crowd of 200 people filled the wooden bleachers, charged with the energy accumulated from 5 hours of competition. Diana Reeves, 28, the undefeated female champion of 3 consecutive tournaments on the California circuit, had proposed a public demonstration. The challenge: any attendee could attempt to block a series of 3 consecutive attacks of her choosing. The organizer, Howard Klein, had accepted the wager as a spectacular closing for the event. A man of slender build in the second row raised his hand without ceremony when Diana issued the invitation. He did not identify himself or announce his presence. He wore casual clothes that did not distinguish between a common spectator and a serious practitioner. 3 attacks from an undefeated champion, at full speed with perfect technique and the power of 5 years of daily training, met responses over the next 7 seconds so precise and economical that Diana was left paralyzed in her guard stance, processing information that contradicted 42 victories and 0 defeats. Howard Klein, an organizer with 20 years of tournament experience, recognized the man in the ring 2 seconds after the final block. He looked down at the handheld program he was carrying, as if needing to confirm something his eyes had already accepted. The 200 people in the stands had witnessed a demonstration none had expected, not from the champion, but from the stranger who had stepped up from the second row. Bruce Lee was 25 years old, and he had not yet said his name. The observer in the second row. Pasadena, in March 1966, was a city where the California martial arts community gathered regularly for tournaments that mixed serious competition with public exhibitions to attract new students. Bruce had arrived that afternoon accompanying his own student, Perry, who was competing in the men's lightweight category, and had asked his instructor to attend as an informal observer. The entrance fee was $2. Bruce paid at the box office without anyone at the door recognizing the name that was beginning to circulate slowly through the West Coast martial arts circuit. He spent the first 4 hours sitting in the second row, observing the matches with the specific attention of someone evaluating principles rather than results. He didn't watch who won but how they won, not which technique connected but why the defense failed before the attack even arrived. Diana Reeves had competed in the women's semifinals 2 hours earlier. Bruce had watched her entire victory, mentally cataloging the pattern of 3 techniques the champion repeated with variations in angle during decisive moments. When Diana issued the public invitation, Bruce raised his hand, responding to a genuine technical curiosity. He wanted to see if the patterns he had identified from the stands held up within the proximity of the ring. There was no strategic calculation in the gesture, only a question seeking a concrete answer. The undefeated champion. Diana Reeves had begun training karate at age 16 in a Los Angeles dojo run by a Japanese instructor who accepted students regardless of gender, a notable exception in the American circuit of that era. She progressed with a speed her instructor described as the product of an unusual combination, an exceptional muscle memory that retained correct technique from the first demonstration, and a competitiveness that did not distinguish between practice and combat. Her first 3 tournament victories came before she turned 20, building a reputation that sparked specific conversations in the California circuit, not about her gender, but about the speed of her right hand, which experienced practitioners described as faster than her physique suggested. Her undefeated record was no accident. It was the result of preparation that included detailed analysis of potential opponents, a habit she developed on her own. When she issued the invitation that afternoon, her calculation was simple: 200 people in the stands, none with enough training to resist 3 attacks from a champion without retreating or dodging clumsily. The demo would end in 10 seconds with guaranteed applause. The seconds of truth. Howard Klein had been organizing tournaments since 1948. He had seen entire generations of practitioners rise, dominate, and retire. He had known Diana since her first tournament and had evaluated her technical development for 8 years. When the slender man from the second row raised his hand, Klein performed a standard evaluation based on 30 years of experience. The man's build, his posture, the way he rose from his seat and walked toward the ring. His stance caused a pause Klein couldn't immediately name. It wasn't the posture of a nervous practitioner or a fan seeking a moment of attention. He walked toward the ring exactly as he walked anywhere else, with no visible adjustment in energy. Klein searched his memory for the face but couldn't place it. The demonstration began. First attack, a Gyakuzuki reverse punch, aimed at the center. In 42 previous fights, this had reached its destination before the opponent could even decide how to react. Diana's hand traveled the full distance in a fraction of a second, only to find the empty space where the volunteer's torso had been a half-second prior. The evasion was so minimal that Diana had to actively process that it had happened. Second attack, a Meijeri front kick, to the abdomen. The volunteer pivoted at an angle that turned the kick into a movement without a target, without retreating a single centimeter. Third attack, a rapid combination of both techniques. The volunteer blocked the first with a minimal forearm contact that redirected the force without confronting it, and evaded the second with the same microscopic pivot as the first. He returned to his starting position with the expression of someone who had been solving an interesting technical problem for 7 seconds. The recognition. The silence in the Pasadena gym lasted about 4 seconds. The first applause came from a group of experienced practitioners on the side of the stands who understood what they had just seen. Diana lowered her guard, her professional neutrality replaced by a look of profound realization. Diana was the first to speak, addressing him directly. "Where do you train?" Bruce responded with direct honesty. "Oakland. I have a small school." Howard Klein stepped toward the ring. He looked at the volunteer for 2 seconds before speaking, a final evaluation that confirmed his suspicion. "Bruce Lee," Klein said, loud enough for the front row to hear. It wasn't a question but a confirmation. Bruce nodded without elaboration. The name generated the silent chain reaction. Bruce Lee and Diana Reeves, 1966. The reaction began in the front row and traveled toward the back bleachers through whispers that transformed the expectant silence into a recognizable murmur. Bruce Lee was the man the California martial arts circuit knew in 1966, though the world outside that circuit had not yet had a reason to learn his name. An instructor from Oakland who had demonstrated impossible techniques in Long Beach 2 years prior, he was a figure serious practitioners mentioned in conversations about speed as a limiting concept rather than a concrete person. Diana processed the name with the expression of someone reorganizing information retrospectively. The 7-second exchange took on a different context with the identification Howard Klein had provided. It wasn't a defeat requiring explanation, but a demonstration with a known source. A distinction Diana established internally with the speed of a practitioner accustomed to evaluating results without unnecessary emotional weight. "I didn't know who you were," Diana said directly, a statement without apology or justification because none was necessary. Bruce responded with a half-smile. "It works better that way." The technical dialogue. Howard Klein seized the moment to make a proposal he had formulated while descending from the side platform. He asked Bruce to remain in the ring for an additional demonstration, which Klein would structure as a technical dialogue between two practitioners rather than a competition. This format protected Diana's dignity without diminishing what the audience had witnessed, turning an unexpected situation into added value for the tournament. Bruce looked toward Diana before responding, a deference the organizer noted as a sign of someone who understood the decision belonged to her as much as him. Diana nodded with the brevity of a professional recognizing a reasonable proposal. Klein addressed the crowd, explaining that he would demonstrate, alongside Diana, technical principles from a system different from traditional karate, a description vague enough to generate curiosity without creating specific expectations that might go unfulfilled. The 200 people in the stands, who had begun moving toward the exit after the initial applause, returned their attention to the ring with renewed interest. The additional demonstration lasted 20 minutes and followed a structure Bruce proposed and Diana accepted with minor modifications. Comparison of principles. Interception versus anticipation principle. System execution. Interception, stop hit. Jeet Kune Do, striking the opponent at the point of origin, before the movement accumulates full power. Sen no Sen, traditional karate, anticipating the attack to allow a simultaneous response instead of a sequential one. The first volunteer Bruce called was a 30-year-old man who had competed earlier that day. Bruce instructed him to attack with real speed without artificial control. The attack came with genuine velocity, and Bruce intercepted it at its origin using the principle of the intercepting fist. Diana then showed the karate equivalent. Sen no Senator. She explained the difference in emphasis. Traditional karate develops anticipation through repetitive kata until the correct response emerges before conscious thought. Bruce's system develops the same result through sensitivity to the opponent's physical telegraphs, or signals of preparation. Economy of motion. Bruce then demonstrated economy of motion. Using Diana as a reference, he showed how his response to her attack required a displacement of only 4 centimeters, rather than the full evasion trained in traditional karate. Diana asked about the practical advantage of such minimal movement. Bruce's answer was direct. Minimal movement preserves one's position for an immediate counterattack, which a full evasion compromises for a crucial fraction of a second. Power versus mass. A young practitioner asked if these principles worked against superior power. Bruce invited the largest man in the room, a 90 kilograms heavyweight champion, to attack with full power. The man hesitated, but Bruce insisted. Real power, not a demonstration. When the heavyweight attacked with the gyakuzuki, Bruce redirected it using the opponent's own momentum. The result left the 90 kilograms practitioner off balance without Bruce ever having generated opposing force. Diana watched with an expression that, for the first time, showed something closer to surprise than evaluation. The aftermath and the legacy. A 10-minute break turned into an informal gathering. Bruce answered questions with the same depth regardless of the asker's rank. Diana observed from the side, noting how Bruce handled collective attention with the same economy he applied to physical movement. The philosophy of the void. As the gym closed, Bruce and Diana shared a final conversation. They discussed the limits of systems. Bruce: a technique that works perfectly in training fails in a condition the training didn't include. Diana: the kata trains the perfect response for the attack the kata defines. The attack the kata doesn't define finds a void. Bruce described what would later become the core of Jeet Kune Do. Absorb what is useful, discard what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. June in Pasadena. Bruce returned in June to honor his commitment. Diana had spent the intervening 3 months working on the predictability Bruce had exposed. When she fought her way to her 44th victory, Bruce noticed the change immediately. You changed the pattern, he remarked. Diana had not waited for another meeting to validate her questions. She had sought the answers in the dojo. Diana Reeves continued her streak to 51 victories before retiring to open her own school in 1970. She incorporated pattern variation into her curriculum, teaching it as a response to a technical problem she identified in 1966. She never named the source, having internalized the lesson so deeply that its origin no longer mattered. In the margins of Diana's personal notes from that night in March, she had written a single question. How many times have I trained the right answer for the wrong question? The blank space that followed was a decision. The answer was to be built through future training, not through reflection. It was the very principle the slim man from the second row had demonstrated in just 7 seconds.